How's it going, guys? Thanks so much for checking out the review. I'm excited to say that I'll be giving away a copy of SteamWorld Quest to one lucky viewer on the game's release date. If you'd like to enter, be sure to check out the link in the description after watching this video. Now on to the review. Image Informed Games is quickly becoming one of those special types of game studios that, despite not leaving their core series behind, keeps successfully reinventing it into different genres. SteamWorld Tower Defense was a solid tower defense game, SteamWorld Heist combined the IP with Xcom-like gameplay but in 2D, and of course the Dig series brought it all into Metroidvania. Now with SteamWorld Quest, the series dips its toes into the role-playing card genre, and to my shock, it works out really well. As for how SteamWorld Quest relates or stands in the timeline of SteamWorld games, I'll leave that up to you to find out. It's a story element that I don't want to spoil for anyone. The general overview though is that the evil Dark Lord is going around the world destroying civilizations while kidnapping all the guild heroes that were meant to protect the world. With towns being burned down and the heroes all gone, it's now up to you to save the day. Who are you though? Well, you play as a group of misfit heroes from all different paths of lives, and as you continue on your adventure, new allies will join your mission. Armley is a noble hero in the making with dreams of being just like her favorite hero, the Gilgamesh. Coppernicka, on the other hand, is a mage that dropped out of college to pursue her studies in the real world, using her powers to better the world. Lastly, there's Galeo, who's a craftsman living with his mom but pretty much uses any excuse available to leave it. He's a bit of a brute but also has a soft side to him with his pet bird on his shoulder helping him stay relaxed. Those are just some of the early characters you'll be able to control in the game, and it's amusing to see their personalities clash together. They often create these humorous interactions and pretty serious moments. In that essence, the writing still feels very much intact, or at least connected to the other SteamWorld games. The gameplay might be different, but the general flair that these stories give off is still here. Over the 20-hour campaign, give or take a few hours depending on your own skill level, I had a lot of fun being taken on this wild adventure. As someone that has played the other SteamWorld games before, there's a lot of neat references to those other games along with other types of pop culture media. From a gameplay standpoint, SteamWorld Quest manages to stay approachable while arguably being the most complex in terms of mechanics for the series. Forget what you've come to know from previous titles in the series outside of their stories and mythology, because the gameplay here is completely new. At its heart, it's a turn-based RPG complete with dungeon exploring and a card battle system. You'll control your team of misfit heroes that grows in size as you continue on your adventure. Your journey will take you across all sorts of terrains, from the forest, steep caves, to the snowy tundra. Each terrain acts as a dungeon with new types of monsters to fight and puzzles to solve. Like most RPGs, fighting monsters comes down to just running into them or attacking them. However, I think the hit detection still could use some work. There were a lot of times where I thought I'd be able to hit an enemy to get the jump on them, only to miss and get attacked myself. As for the puzzles, they focus on finding a missing item or activating a switch of sorts to get something open. Nothing too complicated in terms of difficulty, but some added variety to the combat and just walking through the terrain. The real attraction to the gameplay comes from the card mechanics. Let's talk about the battles first. When entering a battle, you're presented with your deck at the bottom of the screen. Each card is tied to a specific character, so the blue cards can only be activated by Coppernicka, for example. Each character also has their own health stats, and if one of them falls in battle, then their cards are essentially just clutter until you can revive your character. Now each of these cards have a number on their upper left. These tell you how much gear pressure you need to activate them. Gear pressure is built up by using the lower tier cards as they fill up the gauge at the top of the screen. It may sound a bit complicated in explanation, but in practice, it's pretty easy to get a grasp on. It ends up creating this strategy of packing on the lower cards so that you can combo them together for more pressure and then use your higher level cards. Furthermore, using 3 cards from the same character at once creates a chain that unlocks a bonus effect, whether it's a shield for your team or maybe another attack. That then ties over to being able to discard 2 cards for new cards every single turn, letting you continue chaining for bonus attacks. All in all, it's a battle system that integrates into pretty much every nook and cranny. It's all connected. That ultimately creates openings for creative strategy in battle, and it's a lot of fun. It continues on with the RPG mechanics because you have to craft these cards too, or at least buy them. Using different materials and money that you gather from chests and battles, you can create brand new cards and shops to be added to your deck. It's another part of the game you have to manage because each character can only have 8 cards active at once. That means that you have to carefully organize each part of your deck to make sure you don't end up with a hand that only requires high gear pressure. It's a balance that you have to maintain. In addition to the cards, you have your traditional RPG mechanics. Characters can level up as well as use equipment and weapons to better their stats. It ultimately fuses together with the card strategies to make a complex but marvelous system. Throughout the 20-hour campaign, I had a blast taking on enemies that slowly upped the difficulty, pushing me to more cleverly design my card deck. As for post-game content, there is a bit of challenge content at the end of the game, but nothing that I'd say really invigorates as much as playing the initial playthrough. SteamWorld Quest feels like a storybook, and if anything really sells that imagery, it'd be the art style. Just about everything in the campaign is hand-drawn. The environment is made up in multiple layers like a Photoshop project. The last layer is blurred out to give a nice depth of field effect, while the things in the foreground are in focus. That attention to detail is elaborated in how things are drawn too. For example, you can make a lot more of the grain on an image in the foreground, while something in the background has a bit more of a watercolor effect on it. In all of this are the characters that are always kept sharp and in focus, regardless if playable or not. The combination of this artistic design along with the subtle lighting effects really helps solidify this as an interactive storybook come to life. The ever slight glow coming from a hand-drawn flame makes it feel much more lifelike, and I love it. As for the animation, it's more along the lines of animating the individual limbs of each character rather than having the whole character itself be animated. It gives the entire project this whole puppet theater-like effect, but it all comes together really well. Accompanying the fantasy adventure setting is the soundtrack that beautifully meshes together with the environment. Walking through the forest, you'll hear this warm and light sounding flute that feels so calming. Leisurely pacing through the forest just feels peaceful with the music. That then transitions over to a slower paced drum beat the deeper you get into the caves in said forest. All of this sort of just mixes together to create the battle music when you actually run into an encounter. It's a great sounding soundtrack that, despite listening to it for about 20 hours, I never really grew out of it. As for the general sound design, I thought it was great. Outside of the combat moments, just about everything gets some sort of effect attached to it. Walking, opening the menu, which also happens to be a book, or just slashing through the air all get a nice effect. I especially enjoyed the effect attached to when characters speak. It reminds me of classic Rareware games from the N64 era. I usually think that games that try to go for that style can easily make them charming or annoying. Luckily, SteamWorld Quest is the former. One slight disappointment in terms of the audio design though was the lack of HC rumble with this title. It doesn't take away from the overall quality of the presentation, but it's weird for it to not be used in a Switch launch exclusive. SteamWorld Quest is another example of image-informed games being able to dip their toes into a vastly different genre than before, and still somehow nail the SteamWorld take on it. Just how Mario is able to transition from platformer to racer to sports to RPG, SteamWorld has proven so far that it can do the same. Story-wise, it adds a welcome layer of mythology to the series' lore. The gameplay is presented in a lovely style that manages to be approachable, yet still also be the most complex mechanically in the series. Regardless if this is your first time in the genre or just a fan of other SteamWorld games, I think this 20-hour adventure is well worth going on.